This video is sponsored by Skillshare, the online learning community with thousands of fantastic classes that allow you to explore new skills, deepen existing passions, and get lost in your creativity. Considering we're talking about Legends of Runeterra today, and most of you will be playing it on your phone, I actually went and checked out a class on iPhone photography and a way to make pro photos on your phone with the instructor Dale McManus. Considering how good phone cameras are getting lately, it's something that I was quite interested in, and his class in particular was very helpful, very good for beginners, and absolutely helped me do a little bit better when it comes to my social media photography game. Skillshare overall is curated specifically for learning. There are no ads, and they're always launching new premium classes to allow you to deepen your passions to any way you see fit. Go ahead and check out the link in the description, as the first 1,000 of my subs that click the link will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Thank you very much for sponsoring this video, and let us continue on with today's topic. Hello everybody, my name is Bricky, currently running from the law for calling invasive snapvine balanced. Legends of Runeterra, for when you want all the good of League without the League. That's what I said in my original video some time ago. I did a quasi-review for the game way back when. I said it was pretty darn good, way better than it has any right to be, and overall one of the best card games currently on the market. Similarly to my video on Guilty Gear Strive and how I do not play fighting games, I do not play card games either. However, Legends of Runeterra was quite captivating and is a game I am passionate about. And with a ton of new updates, expansions, new cards, etc., I thought it was time to revisit the game and make a follow-up video. I would like to review their new expansions, some of the things they've added, some of the things they've changed, and also see if it still holds up today like it did when I made that prior video. The answer? Yep.
I am LeBlanc. You are a cheap illusion. Who is this imposter?
I covered a lot of the gameplay fundamentals in my original video, but I'll skim through it again just to give you a little bit of a refresher. If you played Magic or Hearthstone, this is easy to use. You both start with 20 health, and you start off with 1 mana gem and 1 person with an attack token. Therefore, you can spend up to 1 mana turn 1 to place down a unit or perhaps play a spell. The person with the attack token can initiate a singular attack once during that round, and then when the round is over, either because both players have passed or you ran out of mana to do anything, then the attack token swaps over, you regenerate your mana, any excess mana is stored as mana for spells up to 3, and you gain an additional mana gem, increasing your max mana. This continues in flip-flops back and forth until one player has no health left. Now this system, this gameplay here, has changed basically none. It is pretty much identical, and if there were any changes, I truly can't think of it. However, a ton of new cards have been added, 2 whole regions have been added, and they started doing things with keywords and special abilities, new keywords for units. Because a lot of these keywords you probably already knew. Overwhelm, for example, is when you kill an enemy card, any excess damage goes to their nexus. I think this is called trample in Magic. But now they've added stuff such as augment and predict and lurk and all these other things that kind of adjust the way the game plays. If I'm not mistaken, I did my first video when Monuments of Power came out, which is slightly after the Targon release, which means the landmark system was just being added to the game. Since then, we've had, oh goodness, KDA event, Sentinels of Light event, Cosmic Creation, Shurima, the other Shurima one, and now Bandle City. It's been a lot. Only maybe 1 or 2 of these are a little bit lacking. Almost every single expansion here has been great. They've added a ton of new flavor. They've consistently updated cards for old regions, new Noxus stuff, for example, and they have added a bunch of new champions that have surprisingly done a great job at mirroring their League of Legends counterparts. Considering they added Shurima and Bandle City, the only regions I think they're missing is Ixtal, which barely has anything to begin with, and the Void. And the Void would most likely be the next major region, and if Lurk has taught me anything, they can do a pretty good monster deck. I would actually be extremely hyped to see Vel'Koz in this game, just for the voice acting alone, but I know I'm gonna have to wait for Kaisa first, because you know, you gotta rake in that simp money. You would think I would be open to that, you know, horny on main is my business practice. However, I think Viego maybe soiled me on that a little bit. Yeah, that's a good segue. Let's talk a little bit about that. In my limited experience in card games, at least for Legends of Runeterra, the best champions, and normally the most balanced ones, are the ones where you can build a multitude of builds around them. You can get them leveled up through a wide variety of regions. For example, one of my favorite champions is Victor. Victor's not very good right now, but Victor's whole deal is working with created cards. Cards that were created through use of spells or other followers, like play a follower to generate a card. Victor himself generates a created card called a Hex Core that allows him to get a random buff, and sometimes this can be amazing, something like Lifesteal or Scout, and then sometimes it can be, I don't know, maybe like Impact. And it's just kind of sad. So naturally, the cards surrounding Victor tend to work with a similar effect. Ballistic Bot, for example, he creates a little ignition every time the round starts, and that's a created card. You have Iterative Improvement, which is a fantastic card to create a version of a follower, and etc. And then once Victor levels up, it makes it so that all created cards cost 1 less. And you know, cards costing less can be a pretty big deal. The thing is, though, is that created cards, while his cards might entirely work around that, you create cards in tons of regions. Targon has Invoke, which allows you to create a bunch of cosmic cards, and even some people like Ravun with the Daybreak ability lets you create more Daybreak cards. Bandle City especially has a very strong strategy where you create a whole bunch of really low-costing Yordles that create other low-costing Yordles. Hell, even Poro decks are about making other Poros. There are ways you can have Victor be useful in more than just the cards meant for Victor. You know what champion seems like it's stayed the test of time? Swain. Swain seems to be a really good and really just balanced character. Swain's whole shtick is that he levels up by doing non-combat damage, things like direct nexus damage or perhaps targeted damage, things like a mystic shot or a get excited on a particular enemy. Doing that combat damage will then of course level him up, and then whenever you do damage to the enemy nexus, it will stun the opponent's cards, which is why it's so well done with Leviathan, because then it fires 3 shots at the nexus, round start, bam, 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 stun, 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 and if he attacks the nexus directly, then he just does a crap load more damage to everything on the board. But of course, out of combat damage is common in so many decks. Noxus, Piltover, Shadow Isles, Bilgewater, even freaking Targon has a good out of combat damage. So Swain might be better with some combinations than others, as are card games, but he's usable in almost all of these. But then we get to someone like Viego. Viego to me just feels really rushed as a champion. They had this big event going on in League of Legends with the Ruin King and the Shadow Isles and the Sentinels of Light and all this kind of stuff, and so they obviously wanted to translate that over to Runeterra, which is why not only Viego but also Ashken, whatever, he came into the game after 20 seconds of being announced. Like, first of all, let's look at his splash art. I mean, yeah, the art itself is fine, but it's so mediocre, it lacks a lot of character, and his level up splash even more so. You look at that big image, and the background is more interesting than him. It feels so uninspired, especially when you see the competition that came out just before him and how good it looks. His level up, the exact same.
All will be consumed by the black mist!
You barely see him. It's really short compared to the recent ones, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it doesn't show off the Viego-ness. It's just him stabbing a guy, and then you compare that to like a Azir who came out before him and his ascended level up.
Come, my destiny awaits.
It's night and day. And finally, his gimmick is something called Encroaching Mist. And every time you create an Encroaching Mist, it gives all other Encroaching Mists as well as Viego +1/+1. So it's like this constant, the more mists you bring out, the scarier they become. Encroaching, I get the whole deal. But Encroaching Mist only works with Viego and a Shadow Isles particular thing. And his shtick to level up is to kill your own units, or he sees his own units die to a certain amount of power, which killing your own units is either you've got a death wish or you're playing Shadow Isles. but it's almost entirely Shadow Isles. That's what bugs me about Viego, is that what build diversity does he have? What can I combine with him? It seems like the only time you can ever do a Viego build is when you just go hard into Shadow Isles and Mist, and then you might use some other side faction to just barely help that a little bit. Some Ionia denies or something of that nature. There isn't anything to mesh. Luckily, Viego is the exception to prove this rule. The rule being that most of it's still pretty damn good. Lurk is a brand new mechanic that they added to the game, and what Lurk does is that when you attack with a lurking unit, all Lurk units in your entire deck, hand, gameplay, whatever, get +1, and this continues every single time. So Lurk units will consistently be growing bigger and bigger and bigger throughout the entire game to where they become just insane beat sticks. Of course, they struggle to removal because their power grows, not their health, but it creates this really cool monster army utilizing Rek'Sai, which Rek'Sai is pretty cool, and Rek'Sai feels a lot like Rek'Sai. And it also brought us Pyke, who is a Lurk character as well, kind of striking from the shadows like Pyke tends to do. And Pyke, oh man, that was a really good translation from League of Legends to Legends of Runeterra. Yes, if he kills a unit, he immediately attacks the next unit. So yes, you can chain a full board wipe if you're lucky or good enough. And that is such a Pyke thing. And the level up is so good.
So many names. I'm just getting started.
With the addition of Shurima, they added, of course, Shuriman Champions. And Shurima has a very interesting gimmick with the Sun Disc. Now, of course, when you think of Shurima, you think of the Ascended. So you think of Nasus, Xerath, Renekton, and Azir. And so these characters all have a level up like normal. Azir especially does a pretty great job at having his old League counterpart where he summons sand soldiers to attack for him. Nasus debuffs the opponents, and yes, they kept his stacking ability, which is pretty dope. And Renekton is just a gigantic beat stick of murder and death, which, you know, that's about right. But when the Sun Disc ends up fully leveled, your champions become Ascended. It's a special level 3 ability where they become basically a win condition. Renekton is beefy as all hell and murders everything in sight. Nasus debuffs everything you've ever known and loved. And then Azir is able to completely transform your entire deck into the Emperor's deck, where you have, yep, Pot of Greed. What does it do? And then Bandle City came out, which brought us a whole bunch of little Yordle followers and multi-region units, which is an interesting concept. A unit can be from Bandle City, but also be from a subsection as well. Bandle City Noxus, Bandle City Piltover, and that allows them to do two things. One, you know, it's for a little bit more build diversity, gives it some cards that can kind of span different regions and allows them to have a bit more say in the card creation process. And more importantly, it allows for Riot to take cards that really shouldn't have been in their region to begin with, Teemo and Piltover for example, and allow them to still be in Bandle, but now they're in multiple areas. One of the best decks right now with Bandle would be the ability to make a ton of little Yordle units and then have Poppy, who is very well done in here too, constantly level up smaller units to her strength and make them into actually legitimately good beat sticks. See, even if I don't like E-Boy, Missed Opportunity, Viego, there's still a lot of really good additions in here, and this is just scratching the surface. I haven't mentioned the Scion and Draven Discard, I haven't mentioned the power of Nami right now, or any of the other crazy builds with things like Sivir and Ashcan. There's a lot of things out there. They mostly did a really good job at implementing League of Legends style characters into Legends of Runeterra and make them work very well, with Azir and Pyke being some cream of the crop. I do have one minor complaint though, and that's the level ups. I feel like they're getting a little bit too gaudy, starring John Travolta. Now the level ups are a highlight for many. Some people play cards specifically so they could see the level ups because it's just that cool. However, at the same time, I would have to say that some of these level ups have been getting either a little bit too long or just a little bit overblown. It's no longer a card changing, it's now a cutscene you have to watch. Don't get me wrong, Garen and Darius are extremely old and I would love them to be updated, but then there's a couple of them, like Poppy and Jarvan for example, where it doesn't feel like you're watching a card level up. You are immediately getting transported to a cutscene and then you come back and your card's leveled. This isn't all of them. You know, Azir and Pike, like I mentioned before, are pretty darn good. But I go back to Swain, for example, because Swain still has that really classic level up because it's a card leveling up. Swain's one has a lot of character to it. The map, the slam, the way the red lightning comes out, and the way the card spins over with a bird shriek. It's got a lot of character to it, and it has way more emphasis than watching Jarvan jump off a cliff. It feels like they're almost trying too hard. Like it's something separate from the game where you have to go watch a cutscene, then come back instead of my card is leveling up. Some other ones like Victor, for example. I think Victor's one looks fantastic. It's literally the card leveling up. Or one of my favorite ones lately has been LeBlanc. And that has no massive cutscene, but instead it's just very simple, but at the same time has a nice visual and the great voice acting to back it up.
I whisper truth into lies.
Sometimes less is more. I don't want them to go back to Garen and Darius, and this is probably an unpopular opinion, but I think they should scale it back maybe just a little bit, or maybe incorporate the card a tad more. So what else has changed? Well, we talk about building your deck first. How is the deck building process? Is it still as fair as it was beforehand? Yep. It's still very good. Lots of cards are being added. I'm sure you're wondering, how do I get all these cards when so much is being added? Well, you have your regions, and you can level your regions up all the way to the end. But whenever a new champion comes out, that region generally has a little bit of an extra tacked onto the end. So you can still keep leveling that area, and you'll never find yourself completely out of levels to go through. Not only that, but you also have the weekly chest or the weekly vault every single week, which if you play a decent amount gives you a ton of cards. And then at that point, you know, the more cards you have, the more essence you gather, the wild cards, and all these things can go to buying more and more stuff. Once again, it is still incredibly fair. Now, I actually got reached out to by Riot after my first video, and they said, hey, Bricky, you want a shitload of wild cards? And I said, damn straight I do. So as you can see on my side, I still have lots and lots of wild cards. However, even before that, I spent almost not a single dime getting any of the cards, with the exception of maybe a champion or two. It's still incredibly fair, and it's only something I would spend money on if you just really badly want the new cards and don't want to wait. How about cosmetics? Well, they still have the usual cosmetics. They have card backs and emotes and little follower dudes, as well as your board. And the boards look great, the music is still great, and the emotes and stuff have been pretty great. I really like Monka Ez. That's a funny one. They have added a few more things though. They've added something called the Prismatics, which is a way to kind of get a foil version of your card. You want to show off that you're a really big fan of this card, now you can. And the foils are a little bit stingy. There's a lot of cards in this game and they don't give you a ton of them. So being able to get those is to really show off the cards you love, like that Omen Hawk value, or like I said, Victor right here. There is a battle pass, or more of an event pass, during any kind of event. That's normally whenever a new expansion comes out, or some kind of event like KDA, which was not very good. These event passes can get you a ton of the emotes, as well as some extra chests. They're almost always a pretty good deal, and even if you don't want to spend the money for them, the free stuff is still worthwhile. And then we have champion skins, which I believe are a bit of a miss. There are two types of champion skins. You've got the higher end ones and the lower end ones. The higher end ones change up the artwork of your character, as well as give you an entirely new level up animation. Pool Party Talia, for example, it's a whole different animation. That's what you're getting for when they level up. The lower end skins don't have a new level up. It's just a different thing of card art for both the level 1 and level 2, which I gotta say, paying for skins in League of Legends, right? That's a character model change. It's there the whole time, and you're in it for about 20 to 50 minutes for your games, right? It's there the entire time. However, at the same time, when you play Legends of Runeterra, you know, if I buy a Diana skin, sure, it looks good, but then Diana gets Culling Striked or Mystic Shotted, or I don't even draw the damn girl, and then it feels like it was never worth it. Not to mention the fact that this is a skin for a champion without a level up. And since there's no model, you're paying that money for literally just art. And the expensive skins are card art plus level up, which you might not get either. it really feels like a miss to spend that much money for card art only. If they're gonna go about champion skins, which I don't think is necessarily a bad idea, I feel like every champion skin needs some kind of level up animation minimum. And then, if you want to sell a higher end one, you can give them some kind of animated motion when they're on the board. You know, kind of think of it like the login screens, where it's a constant loop. Have that in the card art down there instead of a static image if you want to sell the higher end card. I don't know, just paying money for a card that might just immediately die and one without a level up animation just seems like such a waste. And I'm also a little bit worried about it too, because if they don't update Garen and Darius's level up, would they Spirit Guard Udyr him? Where the skin with a better level up is their visual upgrade. So if you want a cool looking Garen with a cool looking level up, you have to buy it to get it. And that's something I'm kind of worried about and don't really want to see. But of course, like I mentioned with Viego, this is a smaller issue compared to the rest of the game's cosmetics, which are overall pretty darn good, and the monetization system is once again pretty damn good. It may seem like I'm a bit more negative than you'd expect from this kind of review, but that's actually not the case. I'm very positive on Legends of Runeterra. I think this is a freaking amazing card game, one of the best card games on the market, bar none. It's just sometimes when they miss, it's good to kind of try to talk and explain why it was a miss in hopes that, you know, you can spot it in the future and to have some compare and contrast with what I consider to be hits. I still play this game quite a bit. It's still very fair. It's still very fun. And I thought before we actually end this video, I should tell you a couple of my more off-meta decks, because one of my more favorite things especially is creating off-meta decks for this game. For example, I have one. It's called Strike Cait. It's a Caitlyn deck that goes hard into Demacia with single combat, riposte, and all that stuff, because striking with Caitlyn puts the flash bomb traps in. So by doing so, the flash bombs act as removal, and then you've got Caitlyn constantly hitting stuff. You basically treat her like Fiora, and then once she's leveled up, you can strike multiple times using Cataclysm to get a whole bunch of Nexus damage. The next one I do is Victor and Aphelios. That one's pretty fun. You can create moon weapons, and therefore that helps out with Victor. And I also really enjoy the Veiled Temple. It's probably my favorite landmark in the game, and being able to easily proc that with things like Ignition, I find really fun. Takes a bit to get there, it needs a little bit of ramp, but I like it quite a bit. And then finally, my last deck. Oh, this deck is so funny. If you want to make no friends, run this one. When I saw the new Vandal City stuff, I thought, I can finally do this. I've always wanted to know if I could mill my opponent's hand, and I think I can. You run Noxus Vandal City. I put LeBlanc in there because I think she's a pretty strong card and I can just use her well. But honestly, this probably doesn't even need champions. You run 3 stacks of Cull the Weak, Hunt the Weak, the one that makes your opponent discard the follower. You run the Tricksy Tentacles to make them discard their lowest cost card. You run 3 stacks of Aloof Travelers to force them to draw and discard. And then I run the Otterpuss for prank to force them to have mana problems. And I run that, I think, Curious Shellfolk, whatever it's called, where when you prank the enemy and see their cards, you can actually take their cards pre-prank for 1 cost less. And it's just, it's something. There's that 2-cost Vandal City follower that lets you generate spells as well. And often, since it's from both your regions, you can get even more Tricksy Tentacles or Hunt the Weak from that too. And basically your opponent's game plan is just toast because you're constantly getting rid of all their cards. I run Pokey Stick to allow me to keep drawing. That's also why the Aloof Travelers is really good. It doesn't always work. Sometimes you force them to discard a freaking jury-rigged Scuttler, and then that's bad. But overall, it's so much fun when it works, and it might be the most cancerous deck I have ever created. Also, Legends of Runeterra had their first ever major worlds recently, and the winner got a good 40 grand. Pretty awesome to see that. Pretty awesome to see it doing pretty well in those little esports there. And the winner was from Poland. Can't escape. I can't escape it. I can't escape the Polish. But overall, Legends of Runeterra remains a fantastic card game. It is worth your time, even if you don't like card games and even if you don't like League of Legends, because like I said, it's all the good of League without the League. Give it a shot. It's on your phone as well as the computer. It's really great, and even the music is pretty darn cool. Thank you everyone for watching this video. It's a pleasure. If you'd like to pick up some merchandise, this is our newest shirt. It comes in white and black. Orchid8.com. Check out the description or No, that's where you would go. Yeah, do that. There's also a bunch of other shirts, hoodies, long sleeves, even stickers. We got a lot of stuff on there. So check it out if you'd like to support me. And let's do some questions from the Patreon. Bricky, what's the best way to hide a body? Well, Snatch taught me that you use pigs, thanks to Brick Top. Snatch is a great movie. What D&D creature / monster would you like to try as a meal? What's those, what are those, the mind flayers? Those things? Give me some squid. I want some squid. What Pokemon do you think tastes the best? Well, Vaporeon is known for many things.